Hi, gals and girls. It's Savage Bruski and
Paddy with Paddy's Parlor Games.
And
and
Jeremy from War God Gaming.
yes, who just launched his various social media mogul network, by the way. Check him out on YouTube, Twitter, and Insta.
And as well as Facebook.
Got the big four covered. Anyway, it is the Savage Bruski Show, episode 4. We're very glad to have you back with us again. Hi, everybody. Just gonna get straight into it. This episode, we had talked last week a lot about different indie games that we like or had enjoyed or played or experienced, and we thought we would dedicate an episode to kind of giving you guys our perspective on a couple of these games. Maybe you haven't heard of them, maybe you haven't seen these before, but they've definitely brought us a lot of joy. And we're all a little more versed on these. Some of them we've all seen. Some of them, we just looked up for this. Some of them, I'm sure you guys have heard of as well. Why don't we just go around a little bit? Paddy, what are you going to be covering?
So I'll be covering Venger Satanis's tabletop RPG, Crimson Dragon Slayer 2020, as well as the Setting Books Chult. And I'll be talking a little bit about Sea Dog Game Studios and just doing a quick preview of Sail Power, Tech Commander, and 20-Yard Shamble.
All right, good spread. Jer, how about you?
I'm going to be talking about Mantic Games, sci-fi universe, the Deadzone and Firefight games, and then Osprey's Rampant series, mostly covering Dragon Rampant and Xenos Rampant.
Okay, good choices. And on my end, I'll be bringing up Talon Games, Cav Strike Ops, and I'm also going to get into War Cradle Studios, Firestorm Armada. That's what we'll be talking today. So, all right. Who wants first dibs?
I think maybe you should go first, because I think there's going to be a little bit of overlap with a couple of the mechanized strike type of games.
All right. Okay, I will just launch off then with Cav Strike Ops by Talon Games. I'm going to try and put links to all of these, their existing websites, or where to find them, where to check them out in the comments. Again, I'm putting these up mainly on my YouTube and on Rumble, so you should be able to go and check those out if any of these games catch your fancy. All right, launching right into it. Cav Strike Ops by Talon Games is a mecha warfare type game. I believe it is 10 mil scale. So you have giant stompy robots. The models themselves are made by Reaper Miniatures. That's what initially drew me to it. I actually didn't know it was a game. I thought they just made these random mech models and checked it out otherwise. This basically, it has some similarities to other games. Like BattleTech is probably the strongest, most well-known comparative to it. But it adds a couple different points of flavor to it, which I really kind of enjoyed. One is that this is very much far future, and it is not just humanity. You have alien races. They also use similar machines of warfare. So you have different flavors depending on which faction you're playing. If you're playing,
That's cool.
if you're playing the Terrans, they're very much a straightforward. You're in the army now, except it's thousands of years in the future kind of feel. They have a good spread of weapons, kind of a combined arms general task force. If you get into the Ritterlich, which are kind of like they're literally like space vampires. They struck me oddly in their aesthetic as being very much like Underworld, like death dealers in battle mechs. It was kind of funny. But they have big stompy armor. They do a lot of combined arms with tanks and armored formations instead of just Cavs, which are the big walker mech types. There's other races. I'm not going to get too much into that, but there's a good spread of diversity there. One of the other things I noticed is it's got a very simple feel in terms of how you're tracking things like damage, how the turns actually go. Some parts of BattleTech were a little bit tricky. Like have you guys played BattleTech?
I played quite a bit of BattleTech, both on Alpha Strike and Classic.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if Paddy has.
I've never so I played Monster Apocalypse. It's probably the only like big stompy robot game that I played, and it's more of a kaiju game than it is an actual I guess mechanized unit.
Roger that.
game. So
Okay.
I have very little concept. So I'm sitting here learning from the wise sages as being the best pupil I can be.
I got you. Well, to explain it, and in case anyone listening hasn't ever played BattleTech or doesn't know what we're talking about here, one of the things that always struck me as a slowdown, and part of the reason that there are differences, probably the main reason that Alpha Strike exists, is you can get into a lot of dice rolling just to take care of a simple action. For instance, the mechanics of shooting and firing weapons are fairly simple in and of themselves. You're obviously rolling to hit based on your modifiers of moving and all that. But then you get into problems like, okay, if you're firing off missiles, how many missiles hit? Where did those missiles hit? How much damage is each one doing? Mark all the damage. Did you hit something critical? If you hit something critical, which critical thing was it? Like you can very easily get into a rabbit hole of dice rolling for one action. And that also has effects on your mechs. But in Cav, they've made that a little more simple. You basically have everything for your Cavs and your units on a card. And as the Cav takes damage, it has sort of a slider. It has just a damage track that's okay. You're in perfect condition. This is how well you move, you shoot, how good your armor is, how tough you are, blah, blah, blah. And as you take damage, that slider moves down for all the characteristics. It's not just one thing that's hampered, which, someone might not like, but I think the simplicity lends itself to a much more fast flow game. And it's pretty simple to do, and those are downloadable. That's not really hard to get a hold of, and the guys over at Talon have been revamping that, not necessarily making a new edition, but making a new starter kit, redoing the cards, bringing the artwork up to date, and making some new models and units. It's, in my estimation, despite the space opera feel and what they lend to it, it's made a lot more common sense type stuff that you find there. The weapons are fairly straightforward. You have energy weapons, you have missiles, you have rockets, you have rotary cannons, you have mini rail guns. It's all fairly standard. You have tanks, you have Cavs, you have flyers, you have infantry. They even print some terrain buildings and objective pieces to use and whatnot. And it's again fairly intuitive. And a Cav does so many actions a turn. It's got certain advantages. You have an ammo bin, which means it can fire more rounds or more shots. You have a weapons officer, or a Wizzo, which means you're getting a bonus to shooting. It's not a bunch of weird, lengthy explanation, doesn't this really not make sense kind of things. It's just very, I can't think of a better word than, it's a humble game system. It does what it does, and it's not, packing 10 pounds of in a 5-pound bag. It does a good job for what it is, and it can even be scaled up or down. It's just played on 3D terrain. I had talked to one of the designers actually on Facebook. They have a pretty good community there, and you have the option to scale the game down. If you're just trying to do an intro game, you can literally have the distances, have the size of everything, and just have it on a much smaller space with smaller forces if you need to. And it's fairly simple to get into. And I was really grateful at one point. They actually sent me the starter set. So I'd played a couple games, just 1v1 with Cavs. And, it's like a 30-page little digest size rulebook. Very, very easy to start, very user friendly, and really not too expensive. The rulebook is maybe $20. They do make it available fairly simply, and the Cavs themselves, again, they're coming from Reaper. They're not highway robbery in the price department. You're spending $5 to $7 a Cav, and you get some decent detail out of them. It's a fun little game to get into. Jared, have you ever played Cav? You have any experience with that specifically?
So, not directly Cav, but probably about the 2008 or 9 timeframe, when I was first kind of getting into the Tau, I was searching for model kits that would be close to the size of a Titan. And there was somebody making 1/60th scale Cavs, and there was the Dictator miniature. It was a beautiful kit. Unfortunately, it was no longer being produced. It was a garage kit. But I fell in love with it. So every time I look at Reaper's site, I always look at that and I was like, is there a way I could make this guy work in BattleTech. But no, Cav always is interesting. I always look at their models, and I've always wondered, does, just like BattleTech, can I use the Dictator if I was playing the Terrans, or if I was playing the Ritter? Is it, or does each faction within that have their own unique Cavs and they aren't available to each faction?
Good question.
Because in BattleTech, I can take a longbow any faction.
Yeah, you can play a Zeus, and yes, of course, people think that's a Lyran mech, but everybody else will have it. You're right. Each of the factions, I don't see a hard and fast rule anywhere that says you can only play those, especially if you're garage gaming or basement gaming. The idea that there are captured machines is not totally foreign. They do have a feel, and it really comes down to what is the specialty. It's not even so much in special rules. That is pleasantly, in my opinion, absent. But the Ridderlich, again, they prefer certain weapons. You're going to find, I might possibly get this wrong, but they go heavy on the Max, the railguns, and heavy on the rotary cannons, and they tend to go heavier on armor. So these are big stompies. They are not super fast. They are not super agile. It's very much, Achtung Panzer warfare. Whereas, the Terrans are more combined arms. The Adon are pretty much economic space elves, and they're all into speed, agility, and energy weapons. So you don't lose in terms of mechanics. You just have different preferences. You have different weapon spreads for the most part, if that kind of answers the question.
Okay, and then so on their site, they have their little the bundle squads as a downloadable data cards. Mm-hmm. Is that a good starting point if you were to get into this game?
Yes, my opinion, yes, because those, you get 4 machines, and their cabs actually come with designations. Like, you will have something that's more an artillery role. It's only got missiles, or it's got longer range stuff, or it's a scout. It's faster, and it has equipment, and it doesn't have such in the way of heavy guns, or it's a mainline cav. And those bundles, those 4 sets themselves, the four cavs usually, it's a good spread of the faction. You get a good amount of their weapons, their feel, their signature units. Like the Dictator is rack. These guys are, not exactly 1-for-1, but they're basically like mech warrior Klingons. They love to fight. Red ones go faster, that kind of thing. And the Dictator is one of theirs, so you'll be running one of those and a couple other guys. And it just, those starter sets do capture the feel of that faction very well, and it's just easy to go with. They use a points value to balance out the forces. You're not modifying, so it's very much like BattleTech. You just take exactly what you're using. It has exactly those weapons. Very, very intuitive to get into, and those starters are absolutely fine. All told, you can get into the game, if you're spending 20 or 25 on the rules. You download those cards, you buy the minis for $5 or $6 a pop. Reaper has really good service on these. I absolutely love the minis. I've never had a bad cast or a bad model or been missing something. Very easy to put together. They use plastic. There's nothing in metal. They're all plastic.
I love Reaper minis, and when you first brought up Cav, I had admittedly no idea what you're talking about, other than you had said that they were from Reaper, and I remember seeing some of the Cav models on my. Oh, we just had some catastrophe. My Mantic mat just fell off of my shelf onto my desk.
Oh no! Product placement. Oh my god!
I don't think anything broke. So.
I think we averted disaster and missed all the models.
But
ladies and gentlemen, we've just heard no models were harmed in the making of this podcast. Everyone is fine.
It was an earthquake. There was an earthquake. My whole world fell down literally upon my models.
Oh boy.
We're doing it live. Anyway, no, it's really cool because it's one of those things that's very easily accessible. The Reaper models, if you have to put them together, they're not that hard to put together.
I believe all the Cav ones are pretty much single sculpts. They did a bunch of them when the Bones Kickstarters, because the one Bones Kickstarter I missed, they didn't have any Cav, or they did have some Cav in it. So yeah, no, Reaper, great company. Unfortunately, we lost one of their big
CEO.
yeah, I believe it was the CEO.
Yep.
Big people from Reaper. That's super sad, but they're pushing through, continuing on. Good for them. They have a great business, based out of Texas. So
Yeah.
local here in America.
Absolutely. And as I went over last time, they have a really good paint range. And you are not going to break the bank. They're dropper bottles. They have a good range. They're very, in my opinion, good quality paints for starting out. You can get everything you need there, and they really are well worth it, and they're economical. So a lot of good reasons to get into this game. It's a great company. The owners are on Facebook. They have a Facebook group. They talk to everybody. They have their own con. They do CavCon, I think, every single year down in Texas. But yeah, it's a great little game. If you're into an indie version of BattleTech with a lot more flavor to it and a much more intuitive rule set, I think that is a game I can definitely recommend to you. And you can scale it up or scale it down as you please. I completely forgot, by the way, Jeremy. Yes, you could use these as sort of BattleTech because they're all on hex bases.
They are.
Oh, very nice.
The scale may be a little bit bigger or smaller than BattleTech, and
Technically, they are bigger at N because they are technically N scale, which is roughly 9 to 10 millimeter.
Yep.
BattleTech is 6 to 8 millimeter, depending.
Yep. But there's a lot of similarities. You look at a Dictator is very, very similar to BattleTech Warhammer. Two big long cannon arms, missile pods on the shoulders that aren't exactly the same. Like you could look at that and go, that looks pretty darn close.
Only thing is, I think the cockpits would be a little bigger because the actual mechs are about the same size in scale wise.
Roughly,
because I believe because of the fluff wise, BattleTech mechs are actually taller than the Cav mechs.
They are, because you have. I did buy a couple other vehicles. I didn't just have cabs when I went through the models. If I can find a picture, I'll throw that on here or something. But the tank, a full size tank is roughly half the height of a cav. A cav is much more like, I don't know. It's not your 10-story building. It's more like your 3 or 4-story big ass armored vehicle.
Kind of like an AT-ST from Star Wars.
Yeah, more along those lines. It's not quite so huge, which I kind of liked.
Well, if I may pause it, if you want to talk a little bit more about indie mechanized big stompy robot type battles. So I was talking to JP Got Rockets, who is a Twitch streamer / painter extraordinaire, fellow, and him and his friend Brian Carnes, they run Brian Carnes is the guy who runs the company, and the company is called Sea Dog Game Studios. You can find them at seadoggamestudios.com. And there he's got a pewter casting company that he goes to a bunch of Brent fairs in Ohio, and they sell their pewter casts. But they also have 3 games that they have on their website, and they have Sail Power, which is a like a sails boat frigate type battle game. And then it's just the game that I'll be talking about, and then 20-Yard Shamble, which looks a little bit more like a traditional board game. So I'm curious how he sells that from his website if you actually get the board, because they give you the rule book separately.
You said 20-Yard Shamble?
20-Yard Shamble, a high-stakes championship zombie racing. So imagine horse racing, but you're betting on zombies.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, wow.
So there's a lot of imagination here, and some of it seems kind of gonzo. I was looking over the Tech Commander Mechanized Strike Vehicles. So MSV is one of the recurring acronyms throughout the rule set, and it's a 40-page rule set. I think it's digest size if you were to try to print it out. The page layout looks pretty good. The actual layout of the rules, I can't wait to see what they do for 3rd edition. So Brian, if you're listening, JP, if you're listening, I really am excited to see what the timeline for the third edition to come out is. I, of course, would like to offer any and all help that I can. But looking at the rules, it scales well between 28 millimeter and 10 millimeter. So, we were talking about those Reaper Bones minis. One of the things that I would like to advocate for is Brian does do CAD designs and makes STLs that you can 3D print from home for Tech Commander. And I think that's really cool. The game in its entirety is print from home ready. So for those guys that don't have access to an LGS or don't have a whole lot of money, if you have a 3D printer and will travel, then you've got a whole game right there in your desktop that you can print out as many or as much as you want of. And I think there's a lot to be said in that. The game does use D20s, and reading over the rules, one of the design philosophies that I really agreed with about Brian was the way that he looks at miniatures. Miniatures are like your computer hardware. They're your rig, and then the games that you own are like the software that you plug into the minis to run them. And that's really cool. Even though, and I think he does a really good job at these CAD models. They're not Zoids, they're not Gundams. They look like big stompy robots that I don't think would see. And I've never played Cav or BattleTech, but BattleTech look a little more Gundam to me, and I could be wrong.
A lot of the BattleTech designs were taken from Japanese animation in the early 80s. So some of the BattleTech designs were, I guess, very anime.
Right.
Originally.
Okay. And then Brian's models, they look a little bit more Americanized to me. Just like the way that the cockpit sits. There's not like, if anybody can recognize a head on top of anything that's got two legs, but they're more cockpit style. They don't have hands with pulsable fingers. They don't look human-esque. They look like mechanized robots with giant like 50 millimeter cannons and whatnot. One of the things I did like when I was looking over the game is he includes rules for a death match, which feels very video gamey, which I think is something that's marketable to somebody who's maybe into Gundam. Maybe they played like an Armored Strike game in the past, but you set up these Easter eggs throughout the battlefield with skulls, and they give you different drops. You get different abilities for knocking out your opponents, like their tank and their infantry. So they have pilots, I think is what they say. But it's something that I'm looking forward to for the third edition. We kind of caught it at a weird spot. So we'll be talking a little bit more about Tech Commander as we get a hold of Brian and as we start to see how the third edition of Tech Commander rolls out. But he goes to a bunch of tabletop gaming conventions, and that's how Sea Dog Game Studios started. And then from there, like I said, he's got his ship combat game and then his Zombies Run game. So you can hit up Brian Carnes on Twitter, and I will try to get his Twitter handle here soon. We'll post it in the links down below, I'm sure.
Yep. I'm like I said, I'm kind of taking notes. I'm going to try and get everything we're mentioning, at least so you can go find the prominent personalities or the Facebook groups or the Twitches. JP Got Rockets obviously has a good Twitch stream, including those type of models. He was working on some. We were both in there the other day. That was actually pretty cool.
Yeah. So it'll be at Brian E. Carnes. Brian E. Carnes. Carnes is spelt with a C on Twitter, and you can hit him up. And from what I can tell, I only just started talking to him a couple of days ago, but he's pretty responsive too. So I'm excited to see more of what him and his wife come up with.
Oh yeah.
So you mentioned he does his own STLs. Do they sell them through their own website, or do they sell them on My Mini Factory?
They do sell them through their own website. So you're going to find those at seadoggamestudios.com. When you go to their website, there is a quick link for games, and then you can hit Tech Commander. One of the things that kind of did throw me for a loop was it'll say Tech Commander from $20. That's not exactly the case. If you scroll down, there's a Tech Commander new player guide where it says new players start here. You can download the rulebook for free there. And then he sells the STL files in packs, or I believe he sells them by singles. But he's got all the preview. He's got all the preview models there scrolling on the website as you go through. And you can find that at cdoggamestudios.com/Tech Commander.
And it's nice to see another ship game out there. There's not very many. There's the one that Mantic does, Armada, and then obviously you can do Man of War, which is the old GW version if you have those roles. Other than that, I think the other one would be the now defunct game from Spartan Games, which was called can't remember, Uncharted Seas.
Yeah, I didn't play that one.
So it's those games can be really fun, especially if you like the whole pirate feel.
Yeah, amen to that.
Yeah, and their Sail Power game, that's the name of that one. He has games that are playable without conversion. So he does the 15 to 20 millimeter, and then as little as 5 to 6 millimeter. So there's conversions to other scales, but one of the things it does say here is that without doing a whole lot of legwork on your own, you can play 15 to 20 or the 5 to 6 millimeter. That was the same thing with Tech Commander. The rules are made in such a way where you can play 28 millimeter. You know, if you've already got a couple of what are the Armigers from Games Workshop?
So Armigers and Knights.
Yeah. I think if you had a couple of those, man, I'm curious if you could even get away with using some of your colossals from War Machine. Like, I think it would be kind of cool to see.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Tech Commander maybe run in a steampunk way with what is the Kador one called? The Commandant.
They have the
Victor.
The
Victor and the
Conquest.
Conquest.
Yeah, Victor and Conquest, and then you have the you got the pirate one and the dwarf one from the Mercs.
Yeah, those might be really cool to play.
Yeah.
28
The
millimeter.
Rulic ones, the what the heck?
Every faction now has 2.
Except for the trolls, they got 3.
Well, yeah. We're not talking about the War Beast side here. We're talking about the mechs.
But anyway, Jeremy, what was you wanted to talk about?
Also, the first game I'd probably talk about would be the Deadzone universe, specifically from Mantic Games. I got into Deadzone all the way back when it first kickstarted. I want to say in 2012. Man, 2012. I want to say 2012 is when it kickstarted. Never heard of them before that. Me and my brother, Raymond, my youngest brother, were looking for something different from 40K. We were kind of maybe burned out on the 40K a little bit in the tournament scene there in El Paso. And we wanted to do our own little thing. And so we found this Kickstarter for this game from Mantic, and it looked like what they were doing at the time is they were making models that could be used generically within your 40K games. So they had their GCPS, which were basically the Imperial Guard, and they had their Marauders, which were basically like orcs. And then they started introducing new factions like the Vermin, which were like rat people, and we're like, ooh, space rats. We get some Space Gaven or some Herd. That's kind of cool. And then they introduced their version of like the Space Marines, which were then Forcers, which were like, all right, this is a different take on it, you know. And so as things went along, we got the Rebs, which really spoke to me because it's a ragtag group of misfit aliens and humans that don't want to be controlled by anybody. And and then they got some mercenaries in there, and then their version of the elves, the Asterians, which are the elves don't want to hurt themselves, so they make robots to go fight for them.
Ghost in the Shell kind of cybernetic bodies. Yeah,
and it's super nice. And this big selling point for me eventually was like they had built this really, it looked like it was a game that they were building to like, we're gonna profit off of Games Workshop, but instead of just putting these models out and let people use them for Games Workshop, we're gonna build our own universe. And they did, and it has a rich world with this ginormous amount of fluff and background and history, and it just drew me in. And the first edition was a little clunky, and there was some really weird things that happened. And they had a rule that like you could call it, I think it was called blaze away, and you just stand in the position, and anybody that walked into a cube that you could see, you could shoot at them.
Hmm.
And so basically the game boiled down to is half your army would be on this blaze away stance, and anybody else that would have to move to try to get to those objectives would have to risk getting shot at by like 6 or 7 different guys to get to them. So they decided it was time to start up and try a new edition. So they produced and put out a second edition, and did another Kickstarter for it. And they brought more races in. We got their version of Space Dwarfs, which are called the Forge Fathers.
Uh-huh.
A lot of people bought into that faction. They wanted their squad, so the Forge Fathers really spoke to a lot of people. Then they got the Nameless at the very end of second edition. We got the Nameless as a faction, fully playable faction.
And that's when I hopped in, because I think they accidentally overshipped you a starter set.
I know I got some extras, and I wasn't super interested in the Nameless.
So this guy gangplanks me into like an ongoing, like a long four tournament where, you know, we did a round robin, and he's like, we just need another player to fill it out, so we got 8 players. I'm like, well, I got nothing to play with. He's like, well, I got all the extra models, and he shucked them off on me. And then I learned how to play. I was enthralled. I loved Deadzone.
So yeah, so Deadzone, and again, it's like the second edition was a really solid edition, and there was obviously some growing pains. They started adding new armies, and they basically put out a book a year for it. So the rules were getting spread thin throughout books, on top of your growing your erratas. So that year we ended up playtesting and putting out, and I want to say it was about 2018, playtesting and putting out their third edition. No Kickstarter, I believe, back to that one.
Yeah, I don't remember.
But third edition basically cleaned it up, put everything into one book, and it's still a great book. And that book actually came with 2 separate books. One that's 100% your background and fluff, gives you everything for
force lists,
the history of the armies, and then your second book is your force list, which just has like all your rules for each of your factions in it. Unfortunately, we did lose a few units and models between editions. Some models moved from one faction to another faction.
And then I think other models just got covered down to in different, and they're like the same units with different loadouts.
Yeah, and that some changes had to happen. It was just bound to happen. And the game, like a lot of games, there's some bloat happening, and unfortunately, the pandemic hurt Mantic in their production, and so they had to cut back on a few of the models that they don't make anymore. But I love the game. It's so simple. There's no measurement needed. Everything's played on a 8x8 board of 3-inch cubes.
Sound familiar?
And it's called cubes, not squares, because it is 3-dimensional. You go up, down, left, right. You're moving a cube, and so it's just super, super fun. And then it scales up to the next level, which is Firefight, which is basically, I would say, in between their version of 40K and Kill Team. It's not quite a full 40K game, but it's not a Kill Team game either. You've got maybe 4 or 5 squads of guys, maybe 1 or 2 vehicles, and you're out there and you're fighting a battle. And it uses a really cool system of command dice that allows you to get some really cool abilities off, and to let you tell a really good narrative story-driven games. And I think Manic does a real great job with that. And one of the big things that drew me into Manic, not only they have some really beautiful models, some of their models could use some work, obviously. They got some growing pains to get through still, but they started off really small and they're just growing, and they'll get there. Like their new plastic Marauders that came out with third edition are beautiful sculpts. They go together super easy. All their Enforcer models, their Dwarf models, the Forge Fathers, those lines are almost 100% now fully hard plastic. I see a lot of people, they look at Manic and like, oh, they do those rest stick models that they're really hard to clean the sculpt lines on. Well, not pretty much anymore. There is nothing except for, I think, a little bit of the Asterian line left in that. The Reb line right now is, I think, not being sold because they're being resculpted. And then
a couple of the Veerman models need to catch up, but
Maybe
my
if you-
favorite models, like just the regular crawlers and then the nightmares, those are hard plastic and those are great kits.
Yeah, the nightmares, the runners, those are all hard plastic. And unfortunately right now the nameless are in a soft PVC plastic because they were mostly produced for a board game called Star Saga.
Yep.
And then they just ported those over into the game to be used, but still great sculpts, beautiful models. But they'll eventually get there, I'm sure, with those guys as well. But the hard plastic, they just got to catch up. They're not a huge company. They got to get their sales to where they need them to get those models produced, because they also do other games like Kings of War. They can only concentrate on some areas and other areas. They can't just put out 20 new kits a month. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
Well, that was the other thing that they do. Like Jeremy was saying, they've got Kings of War, which is scalable. So they've got the big battles. Then they've got, what's the name of the skirmish version of Kings of War?
The skirmish version of Kings of War is Vanguard.
Yes,
Pretty
Kings of War
nice.
Vanguard.
It probably needs a second edition coming up soon.
And then they've got Armada, which is the ship battles.
The ship battles is Armada, yeah. And they actually they introduced flying units to that recently. I want to say within the last year.
So then you've got Deadzone Firefight. Well, you've got
They
Firefight and then Deadzone. And then they even have another game that is a sci-fi version of Blood Bowl. It's called
Dreadball.
Dreadball, that's right.
And they actually do have another level up from their sci-fi game called Warpath.
Yeah.
But Warpath is still on its semi first edition and it's not really being worked on. There's been some people talking about updating it, but I think at this point right now, a lot of people are super happy with where Firefight is, and they don't want to dilute the water and pull players away.
Yep.
So it might be just kind of on hold.
I remember seeing when the Firefight starter kit with the Marauders and the Enforcers came out, and that got a lot of good publicity. I think it was a very well done set. I mean, I was even tempted to get into that. I was, in my 40K alternative phase too. I just remember liking I like the models. I like the sculpts. I like the fact that you have a lot of the factions translated over from, your traditional fantasy setting. Like you have your Plague faction, you have your Ratmen equivalent, you have the Forge Fathers, you have the elves or the space elves, whatever they are. And then you've got your army, and then you've got your super army, and it all kind of clicked, and you just had a much more, it was a limited range, but it had enough difference. It had enough uniqueness where it was like, okay, you definitely have a good game here.
Well, if I can expand on it a little bit, because I might know a thing or two about skirmish games, but so one of the things that I extremely love about it is how much information is condensed into such a small rule book, and how very easily you can get a full-fledged experience out of one book. I don't know if they've released another one since that third edition book.
I think they did a campaign book, and I can't remember if it actually came out only as a PDF or if it actually got a hardback. But there was a entire World WAN campaign that they put out, definitely a PDF for, at least, that happened. And there should be another one coming up this summer. They usually run one every other summer or every summer.
And that's one of the cool things about Mantic is they do these global campaign events where you log in semi sort of battle reports about what you've done with your faction, and you load them up into the website, and they track those wins and losses across players around the world. And that helps them decide which way their fluff is going to go. And like Jeremy was saying, these campaign books, but it's a full game inside one book. You don't need to go and buy a quarterly primer in order to keep enjoying your game. So one of the other things is campaign play. I really like it when I can make a small skirmish set of guys, give them names, they collect battle scars along with treasures in between games and level up. So
yeah, just looking that over really fast. Your rule book is your rule book. Your force lists are all in one book. You're not buying one book per faction. And you can buy individual models, but they basically sell armies in bundles, which for the money, I mean, they're usually around $100, but you're getting easily 40 or 50 models. That's good value where I'm coming from.
I think even a Mantic starter set when I was playing, it was $30 to get all you would need to.
They're 45 for the starters now and 45 for the boosters, I believe.
And that's
Prices have gone up because obviously inflation and everything, but you're still getting with one starter, one booster. So you're looking at $90. That's everything you'll need to play that faction in the game until you want to add something that you would maybe take those separate. But for most part, you'll never need nothing beyond your faction starter or faction booster. And most faction starters either come with a vehicle or the booster comes with the vehicle. So every faction has some type of vehicle type walker available to it as well.
Yep.
Which is cool. So it does have like that scale. Like it's definitely their version of what we would consider kill team. But you're looking at anywhere from as small as 3 guys on your team up to about 15. I think Vermin.
The most I got from my Vermin list was 29.
Vermin
Vermin
and Plague can get pretty large if you want to take a bunch of cheapy guys that aren't worth any points.
Oh, but then you get hit by one mortar strike and you're like, I just lost. I just lost 5 of my guys.
Where'd you go? Yeah.
They ran away. They scared away, little rats.
Well, that was one thing that got fixed. That was the way the mortars worked. Luckily, mortars work a lot better now.
Speaking of mortars, Bruski, what was your other game?
I was gonna go into Firestorm Armada. Before I do, I'm gonna do one more thing though, and this is definitely a plug for Manic. They have some really awesome terrain kits for the various games. Terrain Crate, I think.
Yes.
Those are some of the most intuitive snap fit plastic kits you'll find for fantasy or sci-fi. I can't tell you the number of people who've had like raving reviews. I love those myself. Like they're if you're not scratch building terrain, oh my god. And that lends itself to making it more easier to play. Because if you think about kill team type games, you need a lot of terrain. Well, they're providing for sure. So
oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus with the smaller board size, you don't need a whole lot. It's still smaller than I think even the new Games Workshop standard skirmish board size.
Yeah, I think you're only going to need about 2 foot by 2 foot if I'm right, and that's handy and that's easily managed. And I've got a very, very simple solution to that I just tried out recently, actually. But anyway.
Oh yeah, we're gonna see a video on that. Okay, so
still working.
Armada.
Yeah, so this one I'm just gonna get off by saying this. I probably don't have as much to report about this game because Firestorm's been around for a couple of editions and it's changed hands a few times. And this game, I don't think they were the original. I remember there was a company called Hawk War Games, and I believe they kicked this off, and then I think they went out of business in the mid 2010s. They sold this to Spartan Games, and sometime I think 2017, 2018, something like that, they went out of business, and a group called War Cradle Studios bought the rights to Firestorm Armada. Now, this is a space fleet battle type game. You could lump it in with Battlefleet Gothic or kind of like Attack Wing or obviously a little bit different, but Drop Fleet Commander, those kind of a game. And you have, various races in space. You have humanity, you have various aliens, and you just have fleet-based combat. Rules wise, and again, this is kind of where I'm saying I'm a little bit limited here. War Cradle in 2020 had been announcing that they were beta testing a 3rd edition, and they put all the resources for that beta test online, and they are still there to this day. They have a very bare bones rule book of about 40 some pages. They give you paper templates for fleets, for fighters. They give you basic fleet list rules for I think 3 or 4 races, and that's about it. And it's very no frills. You
2020,
basically
when you said 2020, that about said a lot for me. I mean, has there been any reaction on their social medias or anything like that?
Yes. And just getting into it, the thing on the actual webpage with all the beta rules, you just don't see anything really updated after 2020. Okay. They refer you over to a Facebook group called the Black Ocean, which is their Facebook group. That's where everybody meets up. I'm sure they have stuff on Reddit too, probably a Discord. Going on the Black Ocean, I was really not in the people themselves. I was really a bit disappointed because I would just see a lot of negativity. I saw guys selling miniatures, basically to the tune of, well, this is a dead game. Anyone want to buy these? I saw people really just tearing into the company saying, wow, it's been, 3 years. We're pretty much over the pandemic now and nothing's being done with this. And I can't totally side with them. And essentially the guys who either were in or new War Cradle games developers were like, well, we've downstaffed in the pandemic and we didn't want to release something half-assed and we really want to do Firestorm Armada justice, and they may yet. But as of right now, I can't find a lot of following. I can't find a lot of activity. I can't find a lot of stuff going, which is a shame because in my estimation, fleet battle games, I really have a soft spot for. I've played BFG. At one point I had played Attack Wing, and I had definitely started picking this up probably around 2019. I had started looking into Firestorm and couldn't really get too far because it had died when the last company, Spartan Games, had gone under. And then War Cradle popped up. I was pretty excited for this one. And you will still find minis on eBay. You'll still find stuff here and there you can buy, but it's not got the same footprint. It's not got the same following, but it is your very basic, bog standard, enjoyable space combat game.
Firestorm Armada is actually kind of like my second maybe my third space baby. Because like I said last episode,
Space baby.
Where your baby mama, dude? Where your baby mama?
I started with Full Thrust, and Full Thrust is a great game, but its movement system can complicate people because, as it sounds, Full Thrust, you can keep going faster and faster and faster. You never slow down until you apply negative thrust.
Oh.
So you can fly off the table real easy, and if you fly off the table, you're dead.
You don't want to just apply full thrust. You can cause chafing.
As with many things, as in driving on the road or taking your time with women, full thrust is never a good idea.
So then Battlefleet Gothic is probably my second, and I love that game. But then Firestorm Armada came out, and like it was everything that I think Battlefleet Gothic was lacking at the time. It had a bunch of new races. It had some inventive ideas. I started with first edition under Spartan Games. Also, they didn't run it on a Kickstarter, but they previewed it. Spartan Games did preview it for multiple years, like 4 or 5 years. On it's a website, it still exists, but I don't think it gets posted too much anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Star Rangers Starship Combat News. You get it's kind of like a blog, but he also has a forum, and the forum's still used very sporadically. And a lot of people talk about a lot of different spaceship games in there, but he used to, I don't know if he still does. He used to preview like all the upcoming games, and you could probably go back and look at Firestorm Armada's page on there and see like their original sculpts that they previewed like 3 or 4 years before the newer models came out that actually were the sculpts that they sold originally. And you can just see that the progress that the game made over the years to just from their development to the actual launch. And then they did their second edition, and the fleets totally changed between their first edition and second edition. They got a little bit crisper and cleaner. You kind of see that whoever was sculpting changed. And then they did a third edition, it actually was called Firestorm Task Force, which was a little bit simpler game, and you were kind of centered around a cruiser based squadron game. So yeah, Firestorm, I loved it. And when they announced their last Kickstarter for Spartan, I was super stoked because it was going to introduce a new race. It was kind of like a combination of the Flood from Halo or the Beast from Homeworld 2, where like the ships had like a pathogen that was attacking them and affecting the ships, and you could tell what ship it was from the race, but then it had all these blobs and bluebial growths on the ships, and you could tell obviously it wasn't still part of that fleet. And that was going to be it looked like a really enticing Kickstarter, and it was out for about 2 weeks, and it looked like they were gaining speed, and then all of a sudden their Kickstarter was canceled, and the next day they announced that the business was closed.
Yep.
And I was like, what? and I have massive fleets for the Dendrazi Federation, the Terran Alliance, the Solarian Collective, the Aquan Prime. I have a little bit of Razorth, which is like they're supposed to be like these alien spider people whose ships were designed totally unique. They're instead of almost every game you see world, the ships are like horizontally orientated. The Razorth ships were vertically orientated, so they were tall instead of long, which was really cool. Had that homeworld mothership vibe, which really sold me on them. And so that was the next big fleet I was going to buy into. But yep, they closed down. So when, like Bruski said, when War Cradle announced that they picked up all the Spartan Games catalog, and they were going to start putting out games, and they asked for, I believe, they said they posted a
was it like a GoFundMe?
No, not a GoFundMe, a survey,
yeah,
like a poll to see what game they should develop first. And the game that got the win was their Dystopian Wars game.
Yep, I was gonna say that was the thing. A lot of the guys on the Facebook, the Black Ocean, were saying. They were like, well, there was more draw for Dystopian Wars, and that's more of our thing, and we didn't want to half-ass, in so many words, we didn't want to half-ass Firestorm. But I mean, it's a tragedy if you don't have those minis, if you don't have the old rule sets. It's like they put out templates for these paper doll ships, but it's so basic. And even the rules, like the reading through the beta rules, and obviously the first thing you hear is it's beta. It's not a done deal, obviously, but there's so many holes. There's so many things that it doesn't explain much. It's a really, really bare metal rule set. I mean, I was thinking more along the way it was, because I used to look at all the various races, and I was kind of like you, Jer. I was like, these are exciting. You know, I like the flavor. I like the variety here. I like how much ground we cover. And you really did have a good scale fleet game without all the clunkiness you had in BFG. And
it did have some really unique ways to handle the way combat and boarding actions happened. I think I got maybe 5 or 6 games in of the first edition and maybe 7 or 8 of the second edition.
Right.
I was trying to do the task force at the last time I brought fleet games to Valhalla. Unfortunately, it was also the same year that Drop Fleet Commander launched, and so there was like 4 or 5 people there with Drop Fleet Commander, and it won out. Nobody was interested in playing this Firestorm game when they had Drop Fleet Commander.
Yeah, and honestly, looking at that, I think Tabletop Combat took that over, or took it up. I don't know what the deal was there.
They bought that from Hawk War Games, because Hawk went out of business right around the same time that Spartan did. But unlike Spartan's catalog, Spartan had 3 or 4 games that went with their catalog. Hawk only really had Drop Fleet, Drop Zone.
Yep. And so they've got a new starter set, Scourge versus Colonies, I think UCM, and it's the same ships, same sculpts. You get a full box, you get a full set. I honestly, as far as fleet games go in the sci-fi realm, that is probably the one that is your mainline game nowadays. Like Battlefleet Gothic is still around, but I don't see it as much. I know there's a couple creators that really do keep it alive for themselves, but it's not supported. GW doesn't currently do anything. So I think Drop Fleet is honestly going to take the lead just because of what it is.
Yeah, but probably I do have a pretty large Sheltari fleet for it.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, looking at Firestorm, I hope War Cradle does pick it up at some point, because there's a lot of promise and there's a lot of stuff there. And I swear, if I end up making a game, it is going to end up being a friggin' fleet game at this point, because I'm not necessarily going to wait around. So
I actually was in the boat of making another fleet game, because I have experience in developing fleet games. When I found one-page rules Warfleet, and I was like, wow, this is almost what I was going to do.
Yeah.
So I kind of backed off, and I'm like, well, let me tackle this from a different aspect. Maybe I need to go a little bit more larger scale, a little bit more in-depth rules again. Get closer back to that Babylon 5 Wars type feel, where it's maybe just three big ships and a flight of fighters instead of a fleet scale game. There's a lot of fleet games out there.
Yeah, like Star Wars Armada, same kind of deal.
There's a lot of fleet scale games out there. There's Star Wars Armada. You got Skyfall of Stars. You got Colonial Battlefleet. You got Bosha. Full Thrust still has a huge following. They sell out events at all the big cons that they set up things for. John Tolfi from Ground Zero Games is known as the person who invented the wormhole of mail delivery, because he will mail you a package that you order from England and you'll get it in like 3 days. For like in America, you'll get your package in like 3 days. Everybody's like, how do you do it, John? We don't understand.
Man, we don't ask those type of questions.
Rick and Morty's a portal to your front door and disappears. Yeah.
I was gonna say it's gonna be more like Event Horizon.
So, and I still think Full Thrust is some of the most beautiful fleets of ships out there. So it's just, I love Starship Gaming. I want to do more of it.
Man, maybe we should play some while you're here. Firestorm Armada. It's not dead if you still have a fire in your heart.
Yeah, shameless plug for War Cradle included. I hope they listen. Yeah.
So my second game goes back to RPGs, and so Jeremy and I have played a couple RPGs before, and I've been playing tabletop RPGs for a really long time. And then one of my favorite companies decided to make a decision where their most awesome set of RPG rules, they decided to backtrack those, go somewhere else. And so I felt almost like RPG homeless for a really long time. Started fooling around with making my own rules, played with the family and the kids for a long time, and then along came Venger Satanis. So Venger Satanis has been in the TTRPG scene for a really long time, and he used to do a lot of like really sleazy RPGs, which is like something that he self admits. Starting with like Alpha Blue and Thought Audit and stuff like that. So it's very tongue in cheek, very gonzo, which I enjoy. And then he developed this absolute gem that he terms the O5R. It's like the old school Renaissance, but now it's the I don't know,
the fifth rendition of it.
Yeah, it's the fifth rendition of it. So it's a really good way of getting like new kids back into old school and bringing old school guys back into the new fold. And I met Venger through a couple of Facebook groups. We started talking back and forth, and I picked up Crimson Dragon Slayer, which is his rules light RPG system. And ever since I read of Crimson Dragon Slayer, RPGs have like rekindled in my soul. Jeremy and Ray and I, we started playing again, and it actually made us start talking to each other super consistently and playing. For a while there, we were playing once every week, and now because of life, it's been once every 2 weeks. But it was one of those things that is like, man, this is exactly why I loved RPGs. Furthermore, Venger's brainchild, Chalt, the sleazy gonzo sci-fi fantasy RPG, absolute Chad role-playing game setting. I love this book. I love the hardcover of it. It's sturdy. The font of it's got like this gold inlay set in it, and it reminds me of Neverending Story in all of the best ways. There's a like 100-page mega dungeon in here, races, and it's deadly. It's fun. It's funny. I used to run a couple of campaigns I thought was going to be more like Kingdom of Heaven / Lord of the Rings, and it always became Monty Python. And so I've just accepted that into my soul. And now those are the games that I love to run, and Chalt speaks to me on a level that most RPG books couldn't. So Venger is a extremely cool guy. You can find him at Venger Satanis on YouTube. You can find him at Twitter at the same thing. He's got a blog spot if you go to vengersatanis.blogspot.com. Hold on, I'll have to pull it up. It's vengersatanis.blogspot.com. And that's his old school gaming blog. Venger's a really cool guy, like I said. And if there was never a thing if actions speak louder than words, Venger is probably going to be if in my humble opinion, the father of the modern RPG. Right now, he's doing a thing where anybody who wants to publish a zine that runs with the Chult universe, he is willing to subsidize your zine by giving you $100 cash money. So that way, if you needed help with layout, needed help getting an artist on like Fiverr or such, you can do that. So he is literally trying to get independent writers and artists to come together, create RPG books, and he's willing to throw cash down on that to help these new world imagination people find a space to publish their work.
Which is always really, that's awesome of anyone to do. Like anyone launching a game, as obviously we have experience in uniquely, it can be nerve-wracking, it can be resource draining, it can be really tough to get off the ground. That is such an amazing thing on anyone's part to really just go in and, hey, I will help promote you, I will help get you started, I will help get you funded. Like that's, dude.
Exactly. And so one of the things that also resonates with me, like you were saying, these things are hard to do. Well, that's one of the ongoing themes within the Chult world is, like, not that necessarily that life is suffering, but within suffering, there's always life. And through hard work, determination, you can overcome that suffering. And the way to sum all that soup of words together is Chult. And like I said, it's a fun world to work in because you get all the pop culture references that you could ever want wrapped inside of this, tentacle, this tentacle eldritch package dripping and oozing slime down upon the ground, and you like getting your socks kind of wet, and you're like, fuck it, I want to go bare feet anyway. And Jeremy, you and Ray have been players in my campaign there for a minute. So what was your initial?
I was actually really surprised on how easy it was to make a character in the game. To be honest, I actually never put my character on an actual character sheet. It was that simple that I could just know what my character did by looking at the page that your character's on, and then the stats were memorizable by in my brain. I have a little bit of, it's getting worse nowadays. My brain is not as functional as it used to be, but I used to have almost a photographic memory, so I could see something and I remember it like forever. But I actually didn't even need to write it down on a sheet until we got to the 4th level. And then I was like, oh, it's getting a little hard to remember my hit points. I better start writing these down. Yeah. But yeah, that's the basics of the rules are so simple. Yeah, I didn't need a sheet for level 1 through 3 at all.
It's very familiar for anybody who's ever rolled a D20 for any game in their life. You can pick it up that easy.
Yeah, it was so easy to pick up. The world's definitely an interesting conglomeration. You see hints of Mad Max in there. You see hints of Logan's Run in there.
Conan.
Conan. You get a feel of a little bit of Conan, Dune, like all the pop culture things you can think of. It's in there somewhere. It has some really interesting things in it. I'm kind of excited to maybe write a little bit to put my own little spin on this world. And I give Venger thanks for letting us do this. I just I don't want to ruin what he's creating, because I think sometimes if you put it too much out there for something that isn't done by the original artist, it can get diluted and the feel can get lost, which is what happened unfortunately with games, the D&D game, when Dave Arneson and Gary Gygax started letting other people write. I think a lot of the passion and the feel for their worlds was lost because everybody else just wanted money. They didn't care about their.
Well, I think that's what a lot of the parallel here is, because that's when Venger announced that he was going to do this zine subsidy thing. I was excited, and I wasn't alive back then, but if I were, when Gary and Arneson had opened it up, oh man, I think I would have been champing at the bit to get something out there. I don't plan on making a lot of money. I just want people to like read my stuff and say, man, that made tabletop time just a little bit better.
Well, I'm not saying everybody was just trying to make $1 off of D&D, but there was people definitely out there just wanting to make that dollar. So, yeah, no, excited about it. I think it needs a little bit of a bigger audience, because until I'd met you, or well, not met you, but we talked about it, I'd never even heard of it.
Well, it's not like it's incredibly old.
When you kept saying the word Chalt, I kept thinking you were talking about the continent underneath the Forgotten Realms, because it's basically the same word, just spelled differently.
Oh, is that right? Yeah, there's I don't know. There's so much open playground when it comes to Chalt, and like I said, I'm just thankful for the some of the mentorship I've gotten from Venger. He's an excellent sounding board for these things. His YouTube channel's been around for like 12 years.
Wow.
He's been doing his blog spot for a really long time. And there's a lot of TTRPG wisdom that you can get from somebody who's been doing it for that long. Plus, just a great guy all around.
We definitely run into a lot of really talented, really, really good characters, or a lot of guys that just have given so much back to the gaming community. It's, we could easily take a whole episode just giving praise and shout outs to all of them. But yeah, and you never know. Some of these guys have been around for ages, and you just kind of stumble upon them one day. You're like, oh God, you've been doing this 10 years. What?
Yeah,
no, happens all the time. I think I found a YouTube yesterday. Guy was talking about chainmail, the original chainmail that became D&D, and I was like, and this guy's got a pretty, it's not a huge YouTube, but it's pretty decent size. And I was like, wow, this guy knows what he's talking about, because you explaining like how you can use the original rules for weapons from that chainmail and original D&D with a 5th edition flavor. And it can improve the way you actually fight your combat. I was like, oh, that's cool. That's a good idea. Maybe I'm going to look at this more. Maybe this is something I can put into my games of actual, like, my miniature gaming, because I always didn't make sense to me why a dagger did as much damage against a guy in leather armor as it did against a guy in chainmail armor.
Yeah, I need to check out chainmail. There's still a couple of boxes of chainmail figures here at one of the stores in town.
That's chainmail miniature game by Wizards Coast. I'm talking about the original chainmail that was what you used to develop Dungeons and Dragons, which then was bought by Wizards Coast.
And that was a lot more historical, right?
Yeah, it was
chainmail.
Yeah, a lot more.
They were playing like Little Wars, and then eventually a lot of Napoleonics. When they started getting into chainmail, and they're like, "What if?"
It's the original, what started D&D. So it's probably 1970s. You can find it. It's out there on the web if you know where to look. You can find an original copy of it, or a PDF if you really want one.
Yeah. So that was my second edition. There we got the Crimson Dragon Slayer Chalt. If you want to reinvigorate your tabletop role-playing game love, your passion for it without all of the other nonsense, you can find it at Big Geek Emporium, and then you can also order the books hardcover, direct straight from Venger himself. And if you got a mind to do zines, if you're into that life, like I said, I think it's between now and July 21st. There's a couple of rules. He wants to approve the name. It has to be so many pages, sold at a fair price, and it has to be, I think it's like, I forget exactly what it is, but it's like 50 or 60% of the zine has to be expressively Chalt related in order to qualify for the subsidy.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, I don't want to be paying for your zine that has a advertisement mostly for your game and just tacking onto his game.
Sometimes I look at Mutants and I look at Chalt and I'm like, man, this is a lot of what Chalt's got going for it was a lot of the flavor that I wanted from Mutants. So maybe there's a wormhole somewhere that links the Forsaken Planet to the planet of Chalt. I'm gonna look into that.
Why need a wormhole?
Just get a portal gun.
You can get starships in both games.
That is true. The moon. Oh no, we landed on Schultz. Gets immediately attacked by a sandworm, a chartreuse telepathic sandworm.
Oh,
So what was your second game, Jeremy?
All right, so I was going to cover the Rampant series, which covers well, there's multiple games. It originally started with Lion Rampant, which is a historical medieval game that let you tell very skirmish game, let you tell your little battles. And that it's published by Osprey Wargaming. Osprey, as we all know, has some great titles out there. So then they did their second version of the Rampant rules, which is Dragon Rampant. Dragon Rampant obviously makes sense that it's the fantasy fluffy version. So you get the your fantasy, and then Xenos Rampant, which is brand new, only been out about 3, maybe 4 months, is your sci-fi version of it. And the Rampant series all has the basic, you're going to take between 3 to 4 units. Your leader can either be a part of the unit or a guy all by himself, except for in Lion Rampant, your leader has to be a part of the unit. They don't have a minimum model count in Lion Rampant like they do in Dragon or Xenos, nor do they have a reduced model count.
I did like the reduced model count with Xenos Rampant. It's just one of those fluid rule sets where, you know, some people can get really up in arms about, oh no, you got to have this much to represent this exact unit. And the rules in there are like, no, if you've got like a really cool model with multiple arms that is maybe semi sort of capable of you know, committing some of these combat atrocities, then ship it so long as you and your opponent agree, and you can track their strength points accurately.
So yeah, and so Dragon Rampant, I think, started that you're reduced in your single unit model count game versions, and then it added in some flavors of these special rules. Changed these guys this way and that way, which Lion Rampant didn't have originally. But everything that was in Lion Rampant was 100% portable into Dragon, so you can use anything in Lion Rampant into Dragon Rampant. And then Xenos Rampant came out, and unlike almost every other game I play, these games don't have like their own built-in fluff. They just let you take whatever models you want and build your force around it. Obviously, if you're going to play the medieval, you're probably looking for a historical faction like the Templars or the Saladin with his Saracens. You know, the normal either 100-Year War or the Crusades. That's what Lion Rampant's basically built around. I believe it got its name due to Richard the Lionheart being like one of the big people that they were trying to emulate his battles. So Lion Rampant, Richard the Lionheart. I'm not 100% positive, but that's what it looks like. I think he's even the art on the covers of Richard the Lionheart. I don't own the book personally for the Lion, but I've seen pictures of it, and I that's what it looks like to me. But I do own Dragon Rampant and Xenos Rampant. I bought Xenos Rampant first, actually. And I devoured the book in one sitting, like read right through it. And as Pat will tell you, I'm notorious for, I don't read the rules all the way. I think I get a good idea. I watch a couple of YouTube videos. I'm like, all right, yeah, that's how it played. And then I never break that rule book open again. Because I'm like, I've been gaming long enough, and almost all rules to me basically are like so similar or close that I got the basic gist of it, and I can stumble through without having to dig through this rule book and find all the minutiae stuff that because like, again, I don't care about winning or losing. I want to tell a story. But I devoured this book. I spent one night in the bathroom, started on the toilet, and then ended up in the bathtub.
Oh boy. Confessions of a gamer. We read the rules on the crapper. Sorry.
I was gonna say, it's one of my favorite movies. I think it's called Of Mice and Men. It's a low budget D&D movie kind of thing where it's like group of players, and there's a scene in there where the guy says, "Oh, you're bookster baiting." Excuse me? Oh yeah, you're reading a book you no intention of ever playing with. You're just looking at it. Bookster baiting.
Oh Jesus.
But yeah, so I devoured that book in one sitting, and then I stayed up that night. I should have been going to bed like super early because I think I had my drill for the reserves the next day. But I was like, I got to do stuff with this book, so I ended up creating like 4 forces for armies that like of models that I haven't played with in years. I took my my Carmens from AT-43 and I built an army for them. And I was like, oh, I want these monkey guys with these big cannons on their backs to be able to like move and shoot. So how can I do that? Because unlike a lot of other games, you get 1 action for all your guys. They don't get 2 actions. So you either got to choose if you're going to move or if you're going to shoot. So I built out this force for the Carmens. I think my Carmen army has 5 units in it, but none of the units have more than 3 models. So my whole army is like 9 or 10 models for that force, which is really, they're all pre-painted plastic miniatures with like texture bases already, so I don't have to do any work on them at all. They're just set and done. And I'm like, right, what can I do next? I'm like, oh yeah, I have this huge bolt action army, and I've never, or not bolt action, Beyond the Gates of Antares army. And I actually have never played Beyond the Gates of Antares because I bought this game thinking there was going to be people that would play it. And where I was going because I heard there was a big community up there in Washington, and then I got there and there was no one that even heard of this game. And so I have an Algorian force, and so I was like, all right, well, let me stat up an army for these guys. And I was like, well, I think these guys are more like your elite infantry guys. So I made a unit with like three heavy infantry, 1 elite infantry. They have and they just tons of special rolls for these 3 units. So they got this really cool force. And I was like, ooh, what about my Tau from 40K? I'm gonna make a really shooty army that just stands back and shoots like the Tau do at 40K.
Well, one of the coolest things that I really liked about the game was like he was saying, the unit rules are pretty ambiguous. You have your fighting vehicles, you have your soft top vehicles, you have light, heavy, elite infantry, and then you just kit those options out from there. So everyone has access to the same unit sets, but you can really make those things unique by tweaking. Oh, okay, well, I got a fighting vehicle. I'm going to make it a anti-personnel vehicle. So I dropped a tank rule, making that unit 1 point less, but then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick up like a flak cannon. So that way it spreads out its attack better. And then I increase a point there or some such.
Yeah, and that's basically what you do with it. So it's like really no 2 armies are almost going to be exactly the same. And so so then I built a Tau army, and then I think I finished up my first 4 armies by building out a it was my Marcher Worlds from Warcaster Neo Mechanica. And I was like, well, I got these, and they were a little bit harder because Warcaster units aren't big units. But I was like, oh well, I'll just make all these units like 5-man units, like the actual base game, instead of bumping them up to 10-man units. But I'll make them all 2 wounds, so I'll give them the increased squad size, but then I will make them all a reduced model count.
Yeah.
So they're all 5-man units, but technically they're 10. They're strength 10, so they get the buffs for shooting.
Yeah, that's the other really unique thing about this game is when you have a unit, you're always rolling 10d6. So if you're going to make an attack, you roll a 10d6. You check it against a target value. If you're shooting, then you have a shoot value. And then you're counting your successes on the dice after that. And then when you go from like an average unit might have a strength value of 5. When you drop below half, then you roll 5d6. And so it doesn't matter which way you're going. Everyone's rolling at least 10 6-siders, which is kind of a fun proponent for me because it feels like just the right amount of dice for me. It fits in my hands really well. I've got some pretty large hands.
So it's 10 and 5, but for Dragon and Lion, it's actually 12 and 6. So yeah, funny story. The first time I played, we actually started with Dragon Rampant, which I bought second, and I had found more videos on YouTube on actually how to play Dragon Rampant and almost nothing for Xenos Rampant yet. So I was watching a bunch of Xenos Rampant battle reports, and Dragon Rampant battle reports, and I got a good idea how to play by that. And I just got the book the night before. I was like, well, it seems like this game's basically exactly like Xenos Rampant. You just change that it's a 12-man unit with 12 dice, or at a 6-man unit with 6 dice. And so we went and I met up with my buddy named Sydney, and we played and he played his orcs from no. Did he play orcs? And I might be mistaking this. He usually plays orcs, so I want to say he played orcs.
He seemed like an orky guy.
He plays orcs for almost everything. So he played it, and his models are painted really beautiful. But he hadn't quite finished the paint. No, his army was fully painted. So he's definitely playing his orcs. And I was playing my Confrontation Griffins of Alan, and I didn't have a fully painted force for them. I was 3 models short from having everybody paint it. So I stayed up again all night the night before to get those 3 guys painted. So I'd have a fully painted force for this game also. So I was like, I didn't want to be having my models not only fully painted against
on me. You come to my house with primed models.
So once we show up and we play the game, and Sydney hadn't really got to read the rules. He'd looked through them, and I think he maybe watched a video, but he had an idea. And Sydney's a good guy. I think he kind of lets me just lead him through games. I've taught him how to play Warhammer Fantasy Battles, and we've gone through Warhammer 40K games before too. And I think he more is a visual learner. He likes to one of those people that learns by doing it as he watches it more than he does from reading it itself. Which is cool. And he's a really nice guy, super great friend, really friendly gamer. Had a good time playing games with him all the time. And his force was a little bit bigger than mine, but I had some heavy cav that I kitted out pretty heavily. And most cav has this rule called what's the charge rule that you have to do when you have to automatically charge?
Is it the wild charge?
Wild charge. Yeah. So almost all cav has wild charge. And a lot of cav doesn't really like to fight. They want the peons to go and fight. Right?
We don't want to get our shiny armor dirty.
Yes, we want you guys to go fight. Right? Oh. So they don't actually have a really good attack score. They have a great defense score. They want to be charged. They want the enemy to come to them, kind of thing. But I took these other guys and I buffed them out to actually they were like the guys that wanted to go in and charge. And I kind of made Sid get his cav out of position, and I brought by bringing my cav around, and then I cut back through because I didn't have the wild charge rule, and I could move closer to enemy units and not have to charge them. And his guys had wild charges, so he didn't want to get too close and charge the wrong unit.
Right.
So I basically took his cav out of the game by just the maneuvering ability of my army, and was able to just kind of roll through them. And we got done, and it was a great game. It was super close. I barely won. I think I had 2 cav guys left, and my leader and 2 soldiers, and my entire army. And then we rolled right into, we took all the train down and we set up another table, put up all the sci-fi train, and we rolled right into Xenos Rampant.
And that's when you started rolling 12-sided or 12 pieces.
So not me. I was rolling the 10s, but I mean, I thought I explained everything to Sid without going too fast, but maybe I'd miss something.
Oh.
And so again, he was playing his orcs and I was playing my Tau.
Did he wreck you?
And he destroyed me.
It's amazing what 2 extra will do.
I think I killed one of his units, and he just wiped my entire army out. But I did have a unit that fled off the table, kind of like we just did in our game. But there was 2 things we did wrong when we were playing Xenos Rampant from just playing Dragon Rampant. The first was Sid didn't realize that you got 10 dice and 5 dice. Instead of 12 dice and 6 dice, because he was like, and I didn't catch it till almost the end of the game. And
roll it back.
When he rolled 6 dice for a minimum squad attack at me, and I'm like, Sid, why did you roll an extra dice? And he's like, it's 6 dice, and I'm like, no, it's 5 dice. It's 5 dice, so 5 dice. He's like, oh, I didn't roll that. And I was like, it's cool, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. And then when we got home and I was reading the rules again, and I was like, oh, we totally did our courage wrong. Courage is totally different between the 2 games. So there is some big differences that you want to look at. Like courage is different between the two games. Not every single rule is exactly the same between them. And actually, shortly after I got Xenos Rampant, they came out with Dragon Rampant second, or not Dragon Rampant, Lion Rampant second edition.
Oh, nice.
So I had so much fun playing Xenos Rampant and Lion Rampant. I bought my very first ever historical army.
Oh my gosh.
I'm going to be playing an army of Vikings.
Hell yeah, brother.
In Lion Rampant. And I've got about 36 guys built right now. I have 12 Vikings with double-handed axes. I have 12 with sword and boards, but instead of swords, I gave them all axes. Nice. Well, I think 3 of them had to have swords because I didn't have enough axes.
All right,
and then
Jeremy,
I got 12 archers.
You know what you got to do now, man.
What's that?
You gotta fire up GTA Vice City, listen to Thor the Viking, and that's how you have to speak throughout the entirety of the game.
So yeah, no, it's I'm pretty excited for it. And then I've actually not only that, I've decided to build 2 more forces of historical miniatures. I am gonna build a Teutonic Knights force because I was like, the Teutonic Knights don't get enough love, and they are really cool. I started watching a lot of history channels on YouTube about like wars that happened in the Europe in the Middle Ages, and there was some really cool stuff that happened I had no clue about, wasn't taught about in school. And then I'm gonna do a classic Spartan army for the Greeks. Get myself a Spartan
army.
That'd
be a good way to get people.
Airbrushed abs. Way to go.
But the Rampant series knocked off one-page rules off the top for you, huh?
It sure did. And before I got into Rampant, I was actually really heavily in doing the one-page rules. I like their rules. They're really, really simple, and they're not one page. We've talked about that. If you get the simple, easy rules, front, back, one page, and I'll probably still play one-page rules for some things, but I think my go-to skirmish game right now is gonna be Rampant, because it's so much easier for me to just sit down and make the force I want to play. 3 to 4 units, little skirmish armies. They go at it pretty big. Maybe if I want to scale up to like a 40K scale game, I'll go with one-page rules.
Yeah.
Because maybe Rampant wouldn't scale well at that level. The activation system is a little different. I do like the more I go, you go for my large scale games. Yeah. With Rampant is my whole army goes until I fail an activation roll.
Yeah, and one of the things that I noticed in the one game that we played is even though it is I activate everything, you activate everything, you're not waiting that long.
No, like I was telling you when we were first starting, I've played 4 games now, and not a single one of those games has lasted more than an hour. I think half hour to 40 minutes is the average. Our game is the longest, and we were dealing with a lot of kid stuff happening today. Cousins finally meeting for the first time in a year. Just a lot of emotions, but still, I mean, our actual combat, we went to turn 7 in an hour and a half, and Pat barely eked out a victory against me because I failed 2 courage rolls back to back, rolled double ones.
And then he turned around and like raffle stomped me at my own damn game.
I did beat you in meetings.
Beat me.
And the beatdowns were handed out, as was prophesied in the scrolls.
We rolled the Paddy bomb for the scenario, and this guy's like, "Oh, herp, I'm gonna go disarm the bomb." Rolls a 9. Do you wanna use your ability to re-roll that? No.
Well, I misunderstood the way the Paddy bomb worked. I thought it was only gonna hit his guys, and then he's like, "No, it's gonna hit your guys too." I'm like, "Well, we'll just hit my guys also."
You did a Charlton Heston. That ended things.
Yeah, and then it turned out that both of our heavy armored people were just resilient as all get out, and then they slugged it out until the end.
Oh Jesus!
I still lost, but
by 2 points.
Yeah, by 2 points.
Wasn't as bad as it could have been because I was up 8-3 at that point, and then you ended up eking out those extra points to get the 7.
All right, well that was like the chunk of our major portion there, talked about new games. What about news for Bruski? What's new in Bruski land?
Probably the biggest thing. I have been doing a lot with terrain lately. If you've been on my Insta, and not so much on YouTube, I will say this has been the bane of my existence to film. But I'm still working on this.
About your battle mat.
I've got a battle mat in progress, and someone reached out to me, one of my Instagram followers, Nerdworks. I believe it's actually a father and son duo, and they do a lot in the way of scenery. And he said, "Hey, He had a really good idea. He was thinking for scatter terrain using some of these textured linoleum or vinyl tiles to make your bases for scatter. And I don't know exactly what I was thinking, but I literally went, wait a minute. These are in 1 foot square, 1 foot by 2 foot tiles. They're little, it's not quite on the level of using like plywood or something, but you could use those for actual game tiles. And I went out, got myself a pack and just started getting to work on those and making basically what's going to be a cavern board, 30 by 30 for Warcaster. And surprisingly, there's pros and cons to it over a battle mat, but it's been coming along pretty well. I'm almost, the tiles themselves are done. At this point, doing some scatter to match it, so I have a full board ready to go. As soon as that's done, I'll have that videoed. I've been recording as I go. I'm pleasantly surprised. I think a lot of people might actually like this.
So my one big question is, because I've done kind of the same thing in the past. These like the no like the almost like they get soft in heat.
They can, depending on what kind you get. I think I actually got mine. I think are actually vinyl, not straight linoleum.
Okay,
I
'cause I was
haven't.
gonna say the ones I used ended up getting really soft in heat, and I was living in El Paso, so they warped really bad,
Oh no.
and all my buildings ended up breaking off the tiles.
Mhm.
And I ended up just scrapping the tiles and not redoing them. So it is a great idea. I've done it in the past. They do look really good.
It certainly work up here.
But yeah, up in our area up here, and we wouldn't worry about that heat. But yeah, down in El Paso, it did not work.
I mean, these are definitely, they're a little bit flexible, but they don't warp. I noticed like just laying them out. I had one that was kind of like higher than the other end, and it had a little bend to it. And all I had to do was put a book down, and it went perfectly flat. And I have not glued any terrain to it. All I did was my usual. I did the Black Magic Craft acrylic caulk, paint, sand, and a little bit of baking soda, and it just put that on. And I found the perfect way to texture those, by the way, which you'll see when I finally get to videoing. But that's all I did. And the tiles, I just painted a little bit of detail just so I've got some highlights and midtones, just so that there's a little detail there. And the rest is just going to be scattered. It's totally, the tiles themselves go together one way, but otherwise the scatter is totally modular, and this could even be revamped into other sets. You just swap out the scatter. That's kind of what I was thinking.
Making some of those crystals for mutants for sure.
Bro, just let me know what you want. I will happily make you some stuff.
Oh,
Not even kidding. You just tell me, either send me some illustration or tell me kind of how big or how small, or if you want like one piece for an objective or whatever, I will happily cast you some.
that's awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna hit you up for that.
Sure.
Luckily, I don't need much for mutants.
Yeah, I mean, just given the cube size and the game size, yeah, you're not going to need tons. But seriously, feel free. I'm happy to help you.
Very cool. Other than that, for Jeremy and I, Jared, like we mentioned at the beginning of the show, Jeremy's finally got his socials up, so we need to see if you start posting here soon.
Well, so here's my plan. All right, so I've been painting 3 models every night, and I've been painting them for a few months now. And I'm planning what I'm going to plan on doing, and it won't be this weekend because I'm on the road, and then it won't be next weekend because my final drill in the reserves. But the following weekend, my plan is to launch the film and launch post my first painting video. So every Saturday after that will be a painting video.
Nice.
It's not going to be live. I'm not going to do like the Wargamer Girl live videos. I'm actually just going to film it and I'm going to post it. And I'm not going to give people painting advice because I'm not the greatest painter in the world. I just paint my 3 color standards, which is actually probably more like 10 colors. But what I'm going to do, and I'm posting these videos while I'm painting, I'm just going to ramble about a subject or a thought, what I have for the day. So it could be me talking about Firestorm Armada and what can we do to get Firestorm Armada back on the screen, or it might be why I'm painting these 3 models. So that's going to be what's going up on my YouTube every Saturday. That's the plan. We'll see if I hit it. And then my battle report with my daughter is finally done. I still have a couple pictures. I'm going to get that hopefully all edited up, and it'll be posted up. I'm planning on doing the battle reports posted up on Tuesdays.
Nice.
So probably not the Tuesday after the first painting video, but probably the Tuesday after that. The first one will go up because I want to get the second one filmed and start to edit it before I get the first one posted.
Smart.
And then my brother Ray's really adamant that I probably need to do a live stream, and if I do a live stream, it will probably have to be on Sundays. And he's talking, he wants to, it's got to be stuff we'd still talk about. It might not happen. But he thinks I should do a live stream where I can answer questions for people live. I don't know why I need to do that, but maybe we will. So that's the plan for the YouTube. Obviously, I have the also set up Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. So what my plan with those is, I'm obviously going to be taking pictures of my pit miniatures that I've been painting.
Yeah.
And I'll be posting those on my Instagram and my Twitter, which have links back to everything almost, I think, except for I'm still working on my Instagram. I'm not the most technological guy. There's some way to connect my Twitter to my Facebook. I know there is, because my normal Twitter automatically posts all the pictures I take on it. But my Facebook, I don't know why my game one won't yet. I was reading about, I think I actually have to log into my the app on the phone, not my computer.
Yep. So some of that's changed. My my Instagram used to post to my Facebook and my Twitter. Now I won't do Twitter. I don't know what gives there, but there have been some changes. So don't be surprised if not everything hooks up. One other piece of advice though, and this is something I've found kind of successful, and it's actually helped in getting a little more reach. I tend to use Instagram Reels and do YouTube Shorts for little bits of in progress type stuff. Like maybe you don't have a whole battle report done. Do a 15-second short and just kind of show part of the game and like let people know what's coming, or painting a model, like let them know what you're working on. I tend to find that just increases your reach for whatever reason, and will get you more guys when you come to do the real videos. I kind of, it's not a hard and fast rule, and I'm obviously not the guru of YouTube, but if you're doing at least, one main video a week and 1 or 2 shorts a week, you're off to a good start, man.
All right. Well, and then my Facebook, what I'm going to do with it is I'm going to post the same 3 pictures on my Facebook, but I've been messing around with Chat GPT because everybody's been telling me that AI is the way of the future, and I can get it to tell me these really cool stories sometimes. And so what I plan on doing is I'm planning on giving ChatGPT like the name of my character and maybe like 1 or 2 sentences about her or him, and tell it to give me a story for them. And then I'm going to take that, what it tells me about them, and I'm going to post it with the picture on Facebook. So the picture's there with the little story about them. And I'm also going to take that and I'm going to put that into my Obsidian portal page for whichever, if it's a fantasy model, it's going to go into the Chronicles of Arda, or if it's the a sci-fi guy, I'll go into the Ignis Quadrant background. And so each of my characters that will get paint will actually get a fluff piece added to them into the Obsidian portal. So if you're following along with my stories on the Obsidian portals, you'll be able to keep up with all the characters.
Cool.
So that's kind of where I'm at. I think I'm doing a good job. I started it all, and then I decided to go on a week-long road trip, so I didn't have access to a computer to do a whole lot of this. But hopefully I get home Saturday, do my retirement brief, and then Sunday I do a bunch of work on the computer. We'll see. I do have to go watch the Mario movie with my daughter on Sunday, though.
Nice.
Moral imperative. Absolutely.
And then for me, we were talking a little bit about the zine earlier. Jeremy, Ray, and I, we're going to be working on this. We're going to be working on that zine a little bit with some other guest stars, which you'll find at Big Geek Emporium before July 21st. So hopefully I actually have it by end of May, beginning of June, but we'll see about that. Other than that, my buddy Raven Wolfgar on YouTube, he's going to be talking about Chult, and he's going to be talking about one of my first game zines that I published on BGE. Tomorrow morning, I think it's supposed to be around noontime for me, which I believe is like 9 o'clock in the morning for him. So him and another mutual of mine, one of his friends, are going to be
live in Hawaii.
No, I think. Wait, no, it's opposite for me. Dang it, I'll have to look it up what time it is. Raven Wolfgar on YouTube. He's really, really chill dude, really cool guy. And let's see.
If he's on the East Coast, he's 3 hours ahead of us. So it'd be
scheduled tomorrow for 8:15 a.m. here. So he's on. Pretty sure he's on the East Coast.
If he's East Coast, 8:15 a.m. here would be
it's
11:15 there.
I got it mixed up. There we go. So yeah, we got that going on.
That is pretty cool.
But I think that about wraps us up for this evening, or this morning, or this afternoon, or this late post-apocalyptic paradise you found yourself in.
Whenever you happen to be listening, that's when it is.
So chat log.
What are we gonna be talking about next time then, guys?
Oh, that's a mystery, isn't it? I guess we'll find out when we get there. If we don't take a note about what we think we're going to talk about between now and then we're going to come up with a totally different topic because we forgot what it was.
Full disclosure in YouTube land, there's occasions where we pull stuff out of our asses.
Between the three of us, I don't think there's any lack of imagination for something to talk about.
And honestly, we are racking up some new guests. I gotta coordinate with Jonathan, but War Budgies wants to get on. I think we can definitely accommodate him. I just need to really sit down and figure out when schedule wise it works for all of us. You guys have probably had people approach saying, "Hey, let's get on." Yeah.
I'll definitely reach out to anybody. All righty, man. Well, I think that's it for Paddy's Parlorland.
All right, and of course, obviously, again, let's support Jeremy as he launches his socials. Jeremy, you want to go over the names for your pages again one more time?
So it'll be War God Wargaming for both Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Good luck finding them. I don't have luck finding them right now, probably because I don't have enough traffic yet.
Yeah.
But if you find my Facebook, which is War God Gaming and Painting, because it was created before I changed my name, you'll find the links to all of them there. All the links are there for each of the other pages, and as well as my Obsidian portals, which will have the background for the fantasy games and the backgrounds for my sci-fi games.
And again, we will find those and put those links in the description for not only that, but also the games we mentioned and the companies that make them. So hopefully everything will be as user-friendly and accessible as possible.
Yep.
Already.
Sounds all set up, wrapped up.
It's all wrapped up and ready to go. So
what a nice little bow.
What a nice little talk about things. Hey, Jeremy, you hear about what them rebels did to Zeus's dog? No. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this has been another edition of the Savage Bruski Show. We're very glad to have you along. Whatever you're doing, I hope you're enjoying your tabletop gaming experience. If you want to ask us questions, maybe we just do a Q&A session at some point. You can comment below, reach out to myself, Paddy, or Jeremy on Twitter, Facebook, or anything. Maybe we just do a Q&A session and that becomes our next episode. But by all means, like this around, share it with people that are interested in this kind of content or this kind of podcast. If you want to kill 2 hours, listen to a bunch of nerds talk awesome games, you have come to the right place. So, as always, yeah. I'm Bruski.
I'm Paddy.
And I'm Jeremy.
And we will see you guys next time.